It was written by someone, a professor, a Palestinian called Walid al-Khalidi. And it was a turning point. It was called Thinking the Unthinkable. And he'd written it in the 70s. And in this article, he suggests two states, basically. I mean, he basically suggests partition. And I remember when I read it, I was not at all convinced by it. And he was going to come and visit the university where I was studying at Harvard. And, you know, I was against it. I was against it. And I sat with him. I mean, he's a friend of the family and so on. But, you know, I was, at the time, I remember, against it. Then I went back home from studies back in about 78, 79. I started teaching at Birzeit University, and this was the late 70s, 78, 79. And I somehow found myself in a kind of grassroots leadership position, like with the union of the faculty and staff. And I found myself having to, in fact, do things like write statements representing our position, our political position. And then I discovered by talking to the students and the people around me that what they really wanted was a state, because, you know, they basically, that's what was on their minds. And that's when I adopted the two-state solution. And I said to myself, fine, if this is what my colleagues want, two-state solution, I'll go for a two-state solution. So I went for a two-state solution. This is just to explain to you, actually, that I'm not really wedded to any particular solution. I mean, there's no solution that to me sounds like a better or worse one. I have some principles, I think, that I'm wedded to, but not any specific manifestation of these principles in any particular form. So I went for the two-state solution. I started talking, but before that, in fact, at one stage, back in the early 80s, I suggested that Israel give us Israeli citizenship. This was in the early 80s. I said, you know, why two states? I was still close to the one state. And I thought, you know, maybe the most direct route for that was to ask for Israeli citizenship for everybody in the West Bank and Gaza. I thought this was the most direct route to possibly to a one state at the time. Or, if not the most direct route to a one state, maybe also the most direct route to a two-state solution. Because I was hoping that people on the Israeli side who would read this and see this would worry about the fact that we would become Israeli citizens. And I remember being invited by some Israeli television, major television show, and I went to the show and I was made to sit next to or alongside the settler, the head of a settler movement. And so he was, the interviewer, you know, was challenging me, saying, but, you know, are you going to, we heard you want to become an Israeli citizen. And I was saying yes. And he said, well, you know, that means that you'd have to, you know, obey the Knesset, whatever, I don't know what, the flag. And I said, well, you know, but I heard that Israel is democracy, isn't it? And, you know, if I at one stage had a majority, couldn't I change the flag? And, you know, at one stage he said, but, you know, are you prepared to be a soldier in the Israeli army if you're an Israeli citizen? So I asked him, you know, what does that mean? I can walk around like Israelis with guns in my hand? Yes, yes, I'd like to do that. Why not? And but the idea was, you know, I was trying to put across the sense that going along the path we were going, this was early 80s, we are going to end up over there. But, you know, the Israelis didn't want it. The Palestinians weren't very happy with me. They also criticized me at the time. And so anyway, so I went along with the two states and, you know, engaged in many different talks. What they call, I don't know what they call them, second, third, fourth track kind of talks with the Israeli side for coming up with a two-state solution. And at one stage hoped that this is it when Oslo was signed. I decided, you know, we've actually reached our aim, two states. But then after 10, 20 years of that, I started seeing that it was impossible or coming to be impossible. And therefore I thought of the idea of civil rights, civil and human rights. And it is something, you know, I bring up today when I speak to people. which is to explain to you the following. That, for the last 60 years, 70 years, I don't know how long it's been, we, the Palestinians who've been deprived of various rights, of basic rights, have basically been told, wait, I mean, not told, but we have been, in a position where we've been told, wait until you get a state. Then you will get your rights. Or wait when we have a solution. Then you'll get all your rights. Or wait until such and such happens. And then you'll get everything done. And, recently I decided, why wait to have, very basic, simple human rights. Very basic, simple civil rights. Surely, I don't have to wait for a two-state solution or a three-state solution or any kind of solution to be able to be given those basic rights. And surely the Europeans, Avraham, Israelis, Americans, can't stop me from asking for those rights. So rather than ask for political rights and rather than scare the Israelis by saying, I want, to be able to vote, I thought at least put forward this thing, civil rights. And I was thinking, to tell you the truth, that I'm quite happy if someone else runs the state for me, if I can guarantee that I can live a happy life. It's like, I mean, look at God. One doesn't need to be God or claim the authority of God in order to be able to somehow manage to live on earth the way one does. So if one can actually, if the Israelis want the authority, the political authority, to run the place where I live, fine, they can do so as long as they serve me. As long as I have the rights that I want. I don't want to go to the Knesset, I don't want to vote, I don't want to go into the army, I don't want to be killed, but I want to have free movement, I want to be able to have my schools, education, peace, live where I want, and so on. These are basic civil rights. Organization for my community, my language, my culture, and I think it's it makes a lot of sense to ask for all of this at a time when nothing else seems to be being offered. Why wait another 50 years? I mean, it's been 50, 60 years until I can actually be, given the right for free movement, or to work where I want, or to live where I want, or to have my community needs, like schools, museums, whatever it is done. But, I'm not really against anything. I mean, I really am not against anything. I'm not wedded to any political solution, personally. I want freedom, and I want dignity, and I don't want to feel that I'm less than other people. I don't want to feel that I'm less than, my Israeli counterpart or anybody else. I believe I'm a human being equal to anybody else. And I want the space and the structure that allows me to live and feel that. And, but how it is done, for me, it's secondary. It can be in one state, two states, three states, four states, five states. I'm not a nationalist. And I think, states are there to serve the individual. And if states cannot serve me as an individual, I don't have any need for them. I don't think that the state is a great thing in itself or for itself. It's there to help human beings. If it does that, it's fine. If it doesn't do that, if another state does that, it's also fine. So this is my position. I don't have which is why mine is not a very popular position among Palestinians.
I mean, in a way, you changed sides from negotiating complicated answers while now you ask simple questions, and that might be even more provocative than the complicated answers. Maybe that is the difference between you and Avraham, who is also asking simple questions, but is still engaging in negotiating, not on an official level, but just intellectually, about possible solutions. I mean, there was just published a book, Rethinking the Politics of Israel, Palestine, Partition and its Alternatives, that came out of a discussion group that you were active in, and you even traveled to Brussels to bring that message to the European Parliament. And I mean, there's another group of intellectuals internationally discussing a weird idea that we could maybe go into a little more tomorrow, because one of the proponents of that solution will be here tomorrow, Ayal Meged, who is, I mean, a writer, novelist, and poet, but he also engaged in a discussion about a possible solution that would offer two states on one territory without partition, which is something called a parallel state concept. We might go into that idea a little tomorrow, but there are various groups, and not only individuals like you simply ask the simple questions that are so complicated to answer, but there are still some groups very much on the margin of the political spectrum that in one way or the other declare that two-state option as a trap and seek for alternatives. And as you're part of one of these discussion circles, or of many of various of them, you even shocked the Israeli public in the preparation for the last election when you matched with Arabs for a joint party. So you're still trying provocative ideas and answers.
No, it's not provocative. It's today it's unheard of and unthought of, and in 20 years' time it will be there. When people like myself used to say 30 years ago, two-state solution. So we were communists, no goodniks, peaceniks, pinkos, well poisoners, stabbing the back of the nation. It took 30 years to the intellectuals of the neocon intellectuals in Israel, and all of a sudden, when it's really dead, Netanyahu adopts it. So why develop here? I try to develop the new concept that Netanyahu will adopt when they will die. So it is not about that as much as I think that we are living in two vacuums. The first is conceptual vacuum, and the other one is generator's vacuum. What is a conceptual vacuum? Everybody is married to the concept of two-state solution. But there is no two-state solution. It is not as if you compare a two-state solution to one-state solution and you look for the advantages of this one and the disadvantages of that one. As for now, and politics is mainly as for now, maximum as for tomorrow. You don't have politics for 100 years down the road. As for now, it looks as if the two-state solution is anywhere between the deepest hibernation ever or 6 feet deep. It's a dead option because of settlements, because of government, because the Jewish component is reluctant to relinquish its absolute monopoly over territory, resources, power, identity, and politics. And relinquishing absolute monopolistic rights is very, very difficult for any collective, for any individual. And therefore, the alternative is not between a virtual, fictive two-state solution and an awful, impossible one-state solution, which is going to endanger something which is not fully understood, the Jewish state. Nobody knows exactly what is it, but it is in danger. The real alternative is between one bad state and one good one state. One bad one state is the current state of affairs that for the last almost 5 decades, the longest ever temporary situation in world's politics. For 5 decades already, we have a temporary occupation out there. We have one state, which is the state of Israel, with two regimes. One regime of privileges for me, in one regime of these privileges for him. This is a bad one-state solution. And I say I would like to have, if this is the alternative, I would like to have a good one-state solution, which is based on the principle of, between the Jordan and the Mediterranean, every individual has the right to have the same rights. Basic, simple, almost simplistic idea. Men and women, Jews and Arabs, religious or secular, every individual has the right to have the same rights, as long as the manifestation of my right do not, I would say, contradict, abolish, eradicate, or violently collide with his rights. And we have to look for the equilibrium of rights for all. Now, if he as an individual has his full rights, and I as an individual has my full rights, there is no reason why on top of it intellectually, my collective will not have the same rights as his collective, as long as none of the collectives would like to annihilate the other one. The same as works on the individual level should work on the collective level. So actually what we see here is the evolvement of a different kind of thinking. You know, this kind of the weekend magazine riddles in which they tell you, you have 3 matches, and out of 3 matches, you have to